Persistent Rumor presents Chocolate Yoddah Live. Today is Friday, June 30th, 2023. I am Chocolate Yoddah, spelled Y-O-D-D-A-H, because film studios are litigious. And welcome to another installment of Chocolate Yoddah Live. Oh, what a week it's been. So much going on. I don't even know if I'm going to talk about everything going on in the week, but here's what's on my mind. Really, it's how powerful our brains are and how your eyes can lie to you. Ooh, intriguing. So, what do I mean by that? Well, and by the way, I'm going to tie this all into President Biden, right? Hopefully you are intrigued. And before I forget, hello to the folks at Wisdom. Marcianne has joined me. Welcome aboard. And as always, when I am done with my foppish twaddle, then I will open the mic up. So, it amazes me how your brain is so powerful that it can change what you see. And I mean that quite literally. I'm going to give a couple of examples, and we'll see if this stuff makes sense. So, here's something that I think everyone has experienced to one degree or another. You're running late, and you can't find your keys, and you're really stressed. You got to get out. You got to get to where you're going. It's very important. You hate being late. You might get in trouble if you're late, something like that. It's a stressful moment. And you start running around looking for your keys. Can't find them. You look on the dresser. You don't see them. You look on the coffee table. You don't see them. You look on the kitchen counter. You don't see them. You look next to your computer. You don't see them there either. And it's like, where the hell are they? So you take a deep breath and you're like, all right, I'm going to start over. And you go back to your dresser. And now you see them. Now, why is it that you didn't see them the first time? If they were on the dresser, they didn't just materialize, right? You looked on the dresser and you didn't see them the first time you looked. Why? Why did you see them the second time? And more importantly, why didn't you see them the first time? I think the answer is the same for both. Kind of. So, when you went to find your keys, you pictured your keys in your mind. And let's say, for the sake of simplicity, you were imagining your keys horizontally. That was the vivid image that you had in your mind. Your keys were horizontal. Now, when you went back the second time, your frustration made you clear your mind. You were starting over and your mind was clear, which means the picture of your keys in a horizontal position was out of your mind. Then when you went back to the dresser where they have always been, you saw them, but they were vertical. So think about it. Your mind blinded you to a 3D object in the world simply because the way you pictured it was different than the way it actually was. I find that to be really amazing. And you have to wonder, how many other ways do I do that? How many ways do I block myself from seeing something just because I'm picturing it the way I think it should be, as opposed to being open to the way it is? The second example is in the case of car accident. If you talk to lawyers and police officers, they will tell you that eyewitness testimony is virtually useless, at best, unreliable. So let's go over the facts of a car accident. In this case, two cars. You have a brown car and you have a blue car. And to make it simple, they're traveling in opposite directions. So they're traveling toward each other. One car swerves out a little bit and clips the front corner of the other car. Now, what's happening is you're already picturing what I'm saying. When I said blue car, you thought of blue. But here's the interesting part. You're not all necessarily thinking about the same shade of blue, right? What did I say? Blue and brown, whatever it is, right? So here's what happens. You've got 10 eyewitnesses. And according to police that take statements and lawyers that go over these statements, you're going to get 10 different stories, 10 different versions of what happened. And we know that there is a baseline reality to what happened. Yet, you're going to hear that there's a green car. You're going to hear that there's a white car. You're going to hear that there's a purple car, a black car. You get the direction wrong that they were traveling. And that can be tricky, right? It depends on what side of the street you were standing on. One car, if you're standing on one side of the street, it's coming from your left. If you're standing on another side of the street, same car's coming from your right. So that gets tricky too. But all of this falls under the auspices of how your mind can change what you see and literally make you miss what you see. Not miss what you see, miss what was actually happening. You miss what was actually happening because your brain somehow blocked it. And how does that happen in the case of witnessing a car accident? Well, what can happen is you can remember when you were in a car accident and what happened that time. And that memory can interfere with how you perceived what you saw in front of you. That's how powerful the brain is. And that's why memory is so unreliable. That song, Yes, I Remember It Well. I forget what film that was from. The guy is saying, it was a Wednesday. She was saying it was a Monday. We were in a cafe. We were at a bar. You wore your dress. I wore my pantsuit. Whatever, and then the punchline is he says, yes, I remember it well. That's memory. That's the unreliability of memory. And that is the mechanism by which people just sometimes don't see what's right in front of them. Now, at the top, I said I was going to tie this all into President Biden. Now, before I do, I will let you know emphatically that I don't like Joe Biden. Okay, I haven't for a long time. Way before he was VP, way before, he was sort of front and center on the world stage. Just his voting record as what was he, senator, congressman, whatever his career was, his voting record was something that I found objectionable. Not entirely. It's not like, he was terrible every single time, but he was involved in a couple of things that I find problematic. One was the mass incarceration bill. That one is, I suppose, debatable, right? But the one that I think is not debatable is when he just basically accepted legislation from, what was it, MBNA? the largest credit card processor, and they're the ones that made it so that you can't declare bankruptcy for credit card debt. Right? So that is just the conflation of business and government in one of the most unhealthy ways. And average citizens were hurt because of that. People go homeless because of debt. They get a medical bill they can't pay. Suddenly they lose their house. Now, you want to add credit card debt to that. It's terrible, absolutely terrible legislation. And he was responsible for that. So, never liked him. However, I like to think that I'm fair and balanced. And that's my aspiration. I don't know if I always achieve that. I don't know if I ever achieve it, but that is my goal. Whenever I'm discussing any kind of subject, doesn't matter whether it's politics or philosophy, religion, sex, sexuality, relationships, go down the line, any topic you can name. My goal is to understand both sides or all sides of the perspectives that you can have and be as fair in my assessment as I possibly can be. That is, of course, a very subjective process. So I wouldn't feel confident saying I am fair and balanced. I do feel confident in saying I know that I attempt to be. And so when it comes to President Biden's record so far, if I'm being fair and balanced, I have to conclude that he's done an outstanding job. And I mean, how do you want to measure it? How do we measure a president's success or his progress or his accomplishments? How do we measure those things? Right? It's about, the results. Everything is about outcomes. That's why when people want to talk about Donnie Dump's legislation and, he was a great president. Okay, based on what? All right, so let me pull this up. I'm not going to bother trying to put it on screen. So I just posted this to Facebook and a few other things. I have to put on my glasses to read it. So the next time someone says Biden's done nothing, here are the facts, folks. 2 strongest calendar years of job growth in history. Lowest unemployment rate in over 50 years. And I believe it's also the longest streak of having unemployment below 4%. Manufacturing rebound at the fastest rate in nearly 40 years. 2 strongest years of small business applications in history. And when I say history, I'm referring to American history. Record decrease in the deficit. Fastest gas price decline in 8 years. And the annual inflation rate has been down for 6 months. I mean, folks, these are the facts. So why is it that people are saying that Biden's done nothing? It's the example of the keys. It's the example of the car accident. Their filters about Biden or about the Democrats or about quote unquote liberals or the left, it literally blinds them to what's right in front of them. The facts are in. The fact that I don't like Biden only makes me happy to be wrong about him. I held my nose when I voted for him Is like, we can't have the carnival barker wreaking havoc anymore, which I think any reasonable human beings knew ahead of time, especially New Yorkers. New Yorkers knew who Donnie Dump was. A quick digression, I know three people who don't know each other. And over a 30-year period, I heard these three stories of these people who did work for Donnie Dump. And they all told me the same story. One of them, I think, was billboards that he laid out for him in Jersey, I believe. One of them was some kind of construction, and I don't remember what the last one was, but all three people, I think the last one was electrical work, but all three people told me the same story. They did the work, he didn't pay them, and then he told them straight out, my lawyers will make sure that I never pay you. All three people told me that story over a 30-year span of time, and these people didn't know each other. So I knew he was garbage. And I also read a little bit about the history of his family. You know, this was a guy who was handed an empire, 22,000 rental units, $300 to $400 million in cash, and relationships with banks and politicians. And when he was a local criminal, he was getting away with his crimes, allegedly. But his biggest mistake was putting himself front and center as the White House squatter. And now it's all catching up to him. So, that aside, back to the folks that just refuse to see what is right in front of them because they have these things pictured a certain way in their mind and they just don't want to accept the reality of it. I see you, Mary Kay. I'm going to be finishing up shortly and then I'll bring you in. So yeah, keep these facts in mind and, measure a president, any politician by their results. And I don't care who brings those results. I'm not against voting for a Republican. If the Republican doesn't seem like a nut job, which right now they mostly do, there are a few reasonable ones, absolutely, but the ones in the most powerful positions seem insane to me right now. But if you bring me a reasonable person with a good plan that's well thought out and he or she wants, it lays out the plan, not just talking about nonsense like I'm going to wage a war on woke, like the Krampus is talking about. What the fuck does that mean? I've said it before. You might as well say I'm waging a war on unicorns. Like it's just patently absurd. And this is what the talking points are. There's no policy discussion. And I'm not even into politics like this, but it's infuriating to see these people who are college educated or at least college schooled, right? Degreed, not necessarily educated. And they just say the dumbest things. Democrats hate family. And I'm not a Democrat, by the way. I'm an independent. I don't care about the Hatfield-McCoy's nonsense of this all. I just care about the facts. I care about, let's live life in a reasonable way. That's what I care about. All this other nonsense is just ridiculous to me. So I don't want to hear it. Tell me what your policy ideas are. How or what are you going to do? How are you going to do it? And how painful is it going to be to do it? Is it going to cost me anything? Are you going to jack up inflation just to pay for all this nonsense? Or just to make your friends rich? That's what I want to know. And so when you look at the facts that are surrounding President Biden right now, you want to say he's old? Fine. You want to say maybe he's a little unstable because he stutters? Fine. I don't care. What is he actually doing? And I read the list. That list is fact. So I'm good with it. I'm fine with him. You know, if you have other superfluous reasons for disliking him, that's fine too. That's your business. But I just want to be fair and balanced to whatever degree I am capable of being. And in the case of President Joe Biden, if you're fair and balanced, you got to admit he's doing an excellent job. Most Americans, especially people in the middle class that are working and they are the backbone of the economy, they are benefiting from what this man is doing. You can't say that of a lot of the presidents of the last 50 or 60 years. So that's it on that. I'm going to close out the YouTube portion, and then I'm going to start talking to Mary Kay. So, folks, have a great rest of your week, which is today, and enjoy your weekend. And with any luck, I'll see you on Monday. And until then, peace, love, and granola. Talk to you soon.